Good morning. It has been an extremely busy week here at Open Hand Farm. I'm Penny and I am so glad you are here. If this is your first time to visit, welcome. You have caught me in the middle of the Every Bit Counts challenge for the month of August. This challenge is put on by Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead, and she challenges everyone to preserve something each day. Last week, I felt like I was a little low on my processing, but you guys, life is busy. We are an intergenerational homestead here as of about a month and a half ago. My son and his wife and two children moved in, but since then they've had a newborn also. And my mother lives with us. So there have been some challenges to juggle use of the kitchen for feeding everyone. And there's also been the challenge of having a bigger garden this year so that I could process more of my own food instead of having to buy it. So it's been different. Last year, it was just me and my husband here, and I just sprawled everywhere and just went for it. I have to be a little bit more considerate this year, but we're doing great. And I'm really pleased with what I have been able to accomplish this week. And I have to say again, I've been using my electric canner and it has been a blessing. I told my husband last night that I just don't know if I would have done much canning without it. With the little ones running around and in and out of the kitchen and my daughter-in-law needing the stove, the use of the big pressure canner on the stovetop, I just haven't even done it yet. So with the electric canner, I can put stuff in it, walk away, get out of the kitchen and let her get in. And it's just been great. I have done some water bath canning on the stovetop, which is fine too. That doesn't usually take very long, so it's worked out great. So let me show you what I did this week. Week number 2 of the Every Bit Counts challenge in 2023. Week 2 consists of cantaloupe on day 1. You guys, I never thought I would be making cantaloupe jam. So I just pureed it in the food processor, and then I added sugar. I didn't want to add regular white sugar, so I used beet sugar and vanilla and some lemon juice. I want to tell you the reason I'm calling it Cantaloupe Honey is that I put my pectin in like I was supposed to, but because I used Pomona's pectin for low sugar content items, I did not remember to put the calcium in the mixture first. So that means it didn't set up well. This is what it pretty much looks like. So I just decided to call it Cantaloupe Honey. Day 2 brings raspberries, herbs, and chicken broth. The easiest thing to make is jam. And so I have lots of raspberries, so I just keep on making it. I also have a lot of herbs in my garden, so I decided to dehydrate a lot of them. Last year, I didn't get as many dehydrated as I wanted to, so I went ahead and just snipped off some of everything that I wanted and figured I could do more later. I dehydrate them whole and then I pull them off the stem. That's the easiest way to do it. So I just lay them on trays and I try to kind of break them apart a little bit. And then I just take them off of the trays and put them in a bowl, and then I sit and break them all off and put them in jars. Day 2 also brings the making of chicken broth. I had in my freezer about 4 chicken carcasses from rotisserie chickens, and I had bags of garlic and onion skins. I just threw it all in my big cooker and let it cook all day and all night. So that means day 3 is chicken broth. I went ahead and let it cook for most of the day, and then towards the end of the day, I went ahead and canned up 5 quarts of the broth. I set aside some of the broth for another project that you'll see in a minute. So I have to tell you that these rings I keep reusing because I couldn't find all of my rings and I was so frustrated. And I went in my pantry and glanced to the left, and this is what I saw. You guys, I go in and out of this pantry every day like 20 times and I never saw them there. I'm really beginning to wonder about myself. Day 4 brings chicken and anise hyssop. My daughter-in-law had used some chicken thighs and cut the meat off of them. And so I took the bones from the thighs and made a broth with them. I discarded all the fat and bones, and then I saved all the meat that I picked off of them and went ahead and added them back into the broth to make some soup base, is what I'm calling it. I figured we could add noodles and make chicken noodle soup, or we could thicken it and make a chicken gravy to go over mashed potatoes, or lots of different options. I don't know about you, but I love the smell of anise hyssop. It's such a pretty flower too, and the pollinators love it. So I decided to dry some of it. It doesn't just smell good, but it also has medicinal properties. It can be used for coughs, fevers, wounds, and diarrhea. So I decided I wanted to have some on hand this winter. On day 5, we have black beans and tomatoes. I have this favorite recipe that I use for Chipotle Black Beans, and we are completely out of them. I usually do them in pint jars, and I finally got smart and I'm doing them in quart-sized jars because we go through them. I can only fit 5 jars in my electric canner, so I'm going to do some today and then some another day, and you might see them again before this whole challenge is over. This day I set aside some chicken stock that I had made to fill the jars with. And I'm anxious to see how that's going to taste because I usually just add water. Here's my setup with my beans in one sink and my broth in the other sink. And here are the beans, fresh out of the canner. Now the next thing I did on this day was to make fire roasted tomatoes. To be able to can those, we eat a lot of fire roasted tomatoes in the winter because I put them in taco soup or chili and different things like that, and I've always bought them at the store. So I was anxious to can my own this year because the San Marzano tomatoes are great for something like this. You can just pull the seeds right out of them and just throw them on there with their skin down, and then chop them up, put them in a jar, and water bath can them. I did add lemon juice, and they look delicious. Day 6 is black beans again. I used water instead of the chicken broth, and they'll be great. They always are. I do want you to remember that when you're canning, one of the most important things to do when you're done cooking them and they have cooled is to make sure that you have a really good seal on those jars. And you want to wash the jars because the juices from inside will get on the outside of the jar while they're canning. They'll siphon out the lid and they'll leave your jars with a film on them. They could be sticky or greasy or whatever. Then you want to dry them off really well. And then the last thing you want to do is label them. Don't forget that. I have learned that if I lay my hand on a jar to stabilize it while I write on a second jar, I can write much neater. Sometimes when you're just trying to hold your hand in the air while you're writing on a jar, it's uncomfortable and it doesn't look the greatest. So that's my trick. Day 7 brings butternut squash, cantaloupe, and tomatoes. I know a lot of this is the same old stuff, but that's what I've got and that's what I am preserving. Now, the butternuts I picked, and I had been trying to harden them off, and I wanted to make sure they were okay. So I cut this one in half. So it's going to be a little trickier to clean. The rest of them, I just left them whole, held on to one end, cleaned one, and then flipped it around and cleaned the other end. Much easier. This part was a little tricky, but I got it done. I cut the fat part in half because that's where the seeds are. And I went ahead and spooned those out and just sliced the whole thing up in 1-inch-ish kind of pieces. It was kind of tricky to get them exactly the same with that little moon-shaped part, but I think they're fine. I was able to fill some jars with these and put them in my electric canner, and they did take 90 minutes. They looked really pretty when they were done. The second thing I did on day 7 was to dehydrate more cantaloupe. This time I just took my knife and sliced it into pieces instead of using the mandolin, and it worked great. Went ahead, put them on the tray with the silicone paper on them, and got them dried. I was able to go ahead and fill up my jar of dehydrated cantaloupe with this batch. Then the next thing was more fire roasted tomatoes. I just love these. I think they're so pretty to look at too. You can see all of my bits for week 2. All the jam, the chicken base, the chicken stock, the black beans, the cantaloupe honey, the dried herbs, the fire roasted tomatoes, and the butternut squashes. So much yumminess. Okay, I can't wait to see what week 3 brings. I've been kind of making some list of ideas. Last year, I tried to do as many different things as I could think of. And honestly, some of them was kind of a waste of my time because I did some things that my family doesn't really like very much. And I also had a learning curve last year, so I kind of had to reprocess some things, and they're kind of sitting on the shelf, and just it wasn't the greatest, even though I had a lot. So this year I've been trying to do only things that I know my family will eat, which is the smart thing to do. But last year it was new, it was different, and I wanted some different challenges. So let's see what I come up for next week that my family will love and enjoy. If you're doing this challenge, leave a note and let me know what your favorite thing was that you have canned, and see if that's something that I hadn't thought about, because I'm always up to new ideas, especially if it's something my family would love. So until next time, blessings on you and yours.